Hi, John Venuti here for Zen-Tek Coating, and today we're going to do a little video on how to do chip repair. It's a very popular topic, and today we're going to focus specifically on the ISO-free system, the Zen-Tek system. So I'm going to show you a few techniques. Let's get to it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do on the ISO-free system when you do chip repair, you're going to mix it as a 4-to-1 mix ratio. You don't have to do the standard 2-to-1 because it's a very hot product. So as a 4-to-1, if you're going over an existing ISO-free material, 4-to-1 actually will be a better match for you as opposed to going with the normal 2-to-1. So I'm going to show you how we do that mix. So we're going to take our Zen-Tek resin, and we're going to start out with 100 milliliters of resin, because you want those mixed quantities to be not too far off. If you get too smaller quantities, the mix ratios are hard to keep consistent. So even though it's a chip repair, this is the way you want to go. So we start with our 100 milliliters of resin, and then we're going to add our catalyst. And so we're going to do a 4-to-1 mix ratio. So we're going to take this to 125 milliliters. So now we got our 125, and we don't need that anymore. And then I'm going to mix this up. Now, you know, temperature rating is important. So we're going to do a temperature check. We're at 74 degrees. And that's critical if you're doing chip repair work. You definitely want a nice, fairly warm temperature, especially if it's winter. You want to be doing a chip repair work because it's already a thick material. You definitely don't want to be going in there with, 60-degree material. So with the Zen-Tek system, I've already got my mix. I've mixed up my part A and my part B, 4-to-1 ratio. So 100 milliliters of resin, 25 milliliters of catalyst. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my regular medium reducer, okay, which I have right here, and I have 50 milliliters. And to that, I'm going to add the special rolling solvent. And we're going to just reduce that about 1/3. So I'm going to bring this up to a total of 75 milliliters of reducer here. So 50 of the regular reducer, 25 milliliters of the really super rich rolling solvent. Okay, and then I'm going to take this and I'm going to add it and reduce this by 50% by volume. So I'm going to add this from 125. We're going to bring this up to about 175, and let's see what the viscosity is. And I'm going to mix this up and be back in a second. Okay, so we started with 100 milliliters of resin, 25 milliliters of catalyst would put us 125. I mixed the rolling reducer with the regular medium reducer at about 1/3, and then I added that to go to about 175 milliliters. So that's a 50% reduction by total volume. So right now we're at 175, and you can see the viscosity. So if you look at it coming off, it's a little bit thinner than you would if you were spraying a tub, obviously, because we're at 50% reduction and we got that slow reducer. So now I'm going to add it to the airbrush, and we're going to continue from there. I'll be back in a second. Okay, so today I'm using my trusty Badger airbrush motor. This one's about 5 years old already, but it's 1/6 of a horsepower. It can go up to 57 PSI. Comes with a nice pressure gauge. It's got a water filter, a water trap in here built into it. And what we're going to do is we're going to set this at about 20 PSI to start with. And this is the Badger airbrush, which is a nice, simple, very economical airbrush, but it works quite well. Okay, so I've got my airbrush set at about 20 PSI. I'm going to adjust an air pattern, and on this one I can fine-tune the air pattern from right here by changing the needle and nozzle combination. So we're going to start for an airbrush, and so on this one, now if we play around with the ear cap a little bit, if we continue to open it, you get higher concentration. If we open it some more, we're going to get more. So you can see here right now we're getting a little bit of a starburst pattern. So that's telling me I can actually reduce it a little bit more because I'm still getting that spread pattern. If I increase the airbrush to 30 PSI, I'm getting a little bit more atomization. I can now go with a smaller. So I can decrease the fan pattern size by increasing the air pressure to 30 and still getting the same amount in there. So if we do a sample, for example, that concentration going. Okay, and so when I first start the first pattern, I like to go a little bit heavier because you want to get coverage. So it's okay that if your material starts out a little bit thicker because you're trying to get coverage, and then you can start thinning it as we go. And we're going to be putting on a coat about every 3 minutes. We're going to be putting on a new coat and expanding it. So we'll start at a small layer pattern, and then we'll keep expanding, and I'll show you how you keep it wet. We'll be right back. Okay, so we're going to do a test sample here, and what I'm going to do is 2 different pattern sizes. So we're going to start off, we're at 30 psi right now. We got a little mix, and we're just going to do a small, as if. And then I'm going to do a larger one here. And we'll be back in about 3 minutes. Okay, so we're coming back here. We're going to do another little test pattern. And then we're going to be back in another 3 minutes. So as you're doing the repair, it's important because it's such a small orifice. What you want to do is halfway through the process, you want to just put a little reducer in the airbrush and let it work its way out. And then dip the tip in there just to keep it open. Otherwise, it's going to get clogged up. So we're ready for our next coat. And you could do that either every coat, you could just dip the tip. Just don't dip the whole thing into the solution because then you're going to get paint inside of it. So, okay, so now we're going on to coat number 3. So at this point, I've got my coverage. I'm going to add a little bit more reducer just to get a little bit better flow as I get a little bit wider. And then we're going to get this back together. Let's do a test pattern. Okay, and then we're going to do and if we have to, we'll come back and do one more coat, but for the most part, that should be enough. Okay, so now I'm going on my 4th coat. I'm going to open up the ear cap just a little bit here. Get a little bit wetter of a coat, okay? And we're going to just do this. And then we'll be back for one last coat in about 3 minutes. Okay, so this is going to be my last coat. I've got good coverage now. What I did was I added a little bit more reducer to what's in the mixture, and then this is going to be a wet solvent, so you can see it's almost translucent, and this is just going to be a quick, and that's it. Smooth as glass. Okay, so we're here with the Zen-Tek mix. It's a 4-to-1 mix with a 50% reduction to start, and we're just going to do we're going to start with a fan pattern here. And what we're going to do is there's a little permanent marker that we put on there. So what we want to do is we're going to make that disappear, and we're going to blend out to about maybe a little bigger than $50 here. So we're going to start with just a little blot there. We'll give that a second to kind of just set up, and we'll come back in 3 minutes. Okay, so we're going to go on to coat 2. And we're going to let that sit up. Okay, so we're back at coat number 3 here, and we're going to do a little test pattern. And we'll come back in 3 minutes. Okay, so what I did here for this final mist coat here, I added a little bit more reducer. So we went from 50%, now we're probably somewhere around 75 though, but we'll do a test pattern. You can see how much thinner this material is here. I'm going to turn down that fan pattern a bit. Just a little bit. Yeah. And then I'm just going to... So I start from the inside of the repair in a circular pattern to the outside, and I work my way back to the inside And that's it. I'm done. Okay, so we're going to spray the Zen-Tek system here, and I'm going to show you how this batch airbrush, you can really adjust it. So again, we got it at almost 30 PSI. So we're going to start progressively with a, and then we're going to open it up. And as we keep giving a half turn more to this air cap, you can see how much fuller and richer. So even if you were doing a large area, you can still really get on a fair amount of material with this airbrush once you start opening it up. Piece of cake. Now this is again 50% reduction. As you get further into your coats, you're going to add a little bit more reducer as necessary. I hope this helps illustrate it. Okay, and then when we're done, we're just going to clean up the solution. So I usually just put a little bit of solvent in there, get that thing shaken up and keep it nice and clean for our next repair. And then I'll attach just straight solvent, run it through the airbrush, open up the nozzle so it sprays clean. Okay. At the very end, you're just going to make sure that there's no paint. Just want to make sure there's no paint inside that tip. And then for this, once I get that cleaned out, put a little bit more in there, do a final clean, and I'll usually like to just cap it. That way it stays sealed so that nothing gets on there. This one will just clean it in that solution. You know, the nice thing about Badger is it's pretty inexpensive for the most part. So it's not terribly expensive to replace. They run about $50 for a kit. And if you have any questions about where to get these, just let me know.